the consultation lead for Parsons for this project. My colleague John Grieve, project manager from Parsons, will be presenting this evening, but first I want to go through some housekeeping items. Please note, this is a live presentation and will be recorded. By participating in this meeting, you consent to being recorded. A question and answer session will be held at the end of the presentation. Kindly keep your comments until then. You may submit through the Teams chat or raise your hand and I will call on you. If you need time to think about what was discussed this evening, our comment period is open till April 11th. Please scan the QR code on the screen or visit oxfordcounty.ca/speakup to submit your comments. I will now pass off to Ryan Vink, project manager from Oxford County, to say a few words.
Thanks, Marianne. I'm Ryan Vink. I'm the project manager for the 2024 Transportation Master Plan. My contact information is at the end of this presentation, as well as online on Speak Up Oxford. We also have Ruben Davis, our supervisor of engineering services, and Frank Gross, our manager of transportation, with us here tonight, as well as our consultant Parsons, who Marianne and our next speaker John are a part of. And I will just add that tonight's presentation will be posted on Speak Up Oxford, our video recording, on the website if anybody wants to review after the meeting, or for those not able to attend, as well as a fully accessible version of the slide decks will also be posted on Speak Up Oxford after this meeting. I do want to also acknowledge that I believe we have a county councillor with us tonight, Mr. Phil Schaefer, from the mayor of East Sora Tavistock and county councillor for East Sora Tavistock. I'll give you a chance if you want to say anything, Phil. I don't know. Floor is yours. I think that Marianne and John will unmute you if you do want to say anything. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to the presentation tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Phil, and thank you to everybody else for being here tonight. I think that is the majority of our housekeeping items and introductions. So I will pass the presentation off to our consultant Parsons and the project manager from Parsons, John Grieve.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We look forward to going over this presentation with you, giving you an update as to where we are in the project, and having a bit of a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. First of all, I want to talk to you about kind of what is the purpose of Public Consultation Centre number 2, and why are we here tonight? So really, we're here to present Connecting Oxford 2024, give an update on the overall project information, update on the project status, and as I say, collect feedback from you, the public. As part of the presentation this evening, we're going to be talking about what we heard at Public Consultation Centre number 1. We want to highlight the work that the county has completed since the last Transportation Master Plan in 2019. Provide a summary of findings, kind of reviewing the travel trends of the area, look at our existing and future transportation conditions analysis, as well as collision analysis and other background material. Finally, we want to present the draft recommendations on road network improvements, supporting policies and strategies, and we'll briefly touch on the proposed implementation plan for this project. What is Connecting Oxford 2024? For those of you who may not have already been engaged with us through this process, it is Oxford County's Transportation Master Plan, which is a strategic long-term planning document that outlines and defines policies and programs, along with infrastructure improvements needed to manage both the existing and future transportation demands in the Oxford County road system through to the year 2046. The master plan is to provide a safe, effective, and sustainable multimodal transportation plan, which focuses on all modes of transportation, being it cycling, walking, and the private automobile, with provisions to support freight and goods movement, along with agricultural equipment mobility, corridor access management, and is focused in low carbon transportation or promoting low carbon transportation alternatives. So why are we updating the 2019 master plan, the most recent one? We want to ensure that the community well-being is first and foremost and is focused on. We want to increase the awareness, access, and mobility through an emphasis on active transportation, goods movement, accessibility, climate change, equity, sustainability, and safety. We want to ensure that we're balancing the needs of the county road system, recognizing that there are changing travel patterns. Work from home is on the rise, and the needs of residents and businesses are slightly different when you compare the rural and urban areas of the county. We want to consider the economic vitality of the county and ensure that the implementation of the road network improvements and the asset management is identified and is considered feasible and recognizes the available funds. Fundamentally, we want to increase connectivity in the county and facilitate the further integration of intercommunity and interregional transportation solutions. And then finally, we really want to have a continued focus on road safety, something that the county has been doing for many years, and ensure that we're addressing any ongoing concerns in terms of user safety and speed management. So through this process, or to the point we are at now in the Transportation Master Plan, we're working with our Oxford 2024 vision statement, and it reads that through 2024 to 2046, Oxford County will be supported by a transformative transportation system to lead and achieve sustainable and efficient outcomes and benefits while promoting a safe, efficient, and sustainable multimodal transportation network to move peoples and goods into and throughout the county, including access and connections to opportunities and essential services while improving mobility for all types of road users and communities. So this next slide speaks a little bit about what the process we are taking as part of the master plan. So we are following the municipal class environmental assessment process for master plans. We've completed the phase 1 of the MCEA process and are working our way through phase 2. And as you can see with the box there on the lower left, we're at our second public consultation where we're presenting our evaluation of the alternative solutions and our preliminary recommendations for the preferred solution. And from there, as I say, we will move into finalizing those recommendations and ultimately presenting the Transportation Master Plan report to the county later this year. So the next series of slides, I just want to briefly highlight and go over a bit of what we heard in the first Public Consultation Centre. We've tried to organize these slides both geographically as well as by category. So see this first slide is focusing on comments that we received or that were placed on the interactive map that we had as part of Public Consultation Centre 1. For the Southwest Oxford Township, Ingersoll, and Zora, kind of southern Zora area. And we can see, in the broad categories that the comments we heard ranged or were from, the categories of safety, active transportation, and traffic. There were some concerns about intersection control and difficulties making turns. The perception of concerns of dangerous conditions for cyclists. Again, with regards to active transportation, there was a desire to ensure that those corridors were established and that there's an increase in active transportation infrastructure. And then from a traffic perspective, we heard some comments about limiting truck traffic through the central areas of Ingersoll. Looking at kind of the next two areas, looking at Tillsonburg and Norwich, again, broadly categorized in safety, active transportation, and traffic. Comments around pedestrian access, discontinuous or missing sidewalks, and some concerns about signal timings along roads in Tillsonburg. With the East Zora, Tavistock, and Blandford Blenheim kind of area, we heard broadly on safety, active transportation, transportation-related comments, as well as traffic. They ranged or were based on excessive speed concerns, pedestrian access or pedestrian amenities, or concerns or jurisdictional questions about existing roads, as well as another signal timing comment. And then looking at sort of East Woodstock area, the southern part of the Blandford Blenheim township, as well as the northern section of Norwich. We saw broadly, again, categories in safety, traffic, and transportation, concerns about dangerous intersections and intersection control, discussions around adding turning lanes, rerouting roads, and the need for both parking and illumination. Then in West Woodstock, we heard broadly, again, acts of transportation, traffic transportation, talking about connectivity and sidewalks, intersection control and signal timing, and then discussions around intersection layout, pedestrian access, and railway crossings even. So again, what we saw, some topics that came up multiple times: access, connectivity, intersection control, signal timings. So that all of these comments have been summarized and are included in our Public Consultation Centre summary report number 1, which ultimately is appended to our Transportation Master Plan and helped inform the recommendations that we'll present to you later this evening. The next series of slides, again, we want to now highlight what has the county done, or what has the county accomplished since the 2019 Transportation Master Plan was approved. And these series of slides highlight those projects or infrastructure improvements that they've completed. And this first slide is highlighting their annual capital programs. So with the County of Oxford, they have a series of annual programs where they can complete improvements on an annual basis, and funds for those projects are annually allocated within their capital budget program. And so as you can see here, they have many programs: guide rail installations, pedestrian crossings, intersection illumination, cycling infrastructure, and so on. And so they've completed many projects over these years since 2019. A few highlights that are want to give to you here today relating to pedestrian crossings. The county has completed 13 pedestrian crossings since the beginning of 2020 and has an additional 3 planned for the remainder of this year and into 2024. So they're really committed and investing in that pedestrian connectivity, pedestrian infrastructure element on county roads. Cycling infrastructure is actually a relatively newer annual capital program, and that has come out as a direct result of their approval of their cycling master plan earlier this year. No, sorry, late last year. And so now that annual program will provide for the design and implementation of cycling infrastructure over the next number of years, as directed in the Cycling Master Plan implementation plan. And then looking further down on the list of projects, traffic signals and traffic calming, again recognizing or directly responding to some of those comments we're hearing and trends we're seeing in our discussions with residents and area municipalities is investing in additional traffic signals to help with intersection control, intersection safety. They've seen the installation of 10 traffic signals since 2020, with an additional one planned for this year. And then from a traffic calming perspective, they've completed over 20 speed management and road safety reviews since 2020 and have an additional 6 planned for this year. Again, highlighting their commitment to road safety, as well as their commitment and efforts in pedestrian safety, intersection safety, and overall connectivity. Looking at some of the major road reconstructions they've completed, what we can see in our review is that they've actually completed 7 major road reconstructions, rehabilitations, or urbanizations since 2020. Of those 7 projects, 4 of them were previously identified in the 2019 Transportation Master Plan Implementation Plan, and the other 3 have come from various forms, which ultimately the county staff integrated into their implementation plan. And so those 7 projects mapped on the right, and I'll zoom into the map here shortly just so everyone can see, but those 7 projects were Oxford Road 9 in Woodstock, Oxford Road 16 in Zora Township, Oxford Road 54 in Woodstock, Oxford Road 59 in Woodstock, Oxford Road 119 in Ingersoll, Oxford Road 36 in Blandford Blenheim, and then Oxford Road 35 in Woodstock. Again, so just zooming in a little bit, as you can see, the 4 projects in the Woodstock area, the one up in Zora Township, in Ingersoll, and then in Blandford and Blenheim. So those are the 7 projects that, again, major road rehabilitations, urbanizations that have been completed since 2020. Moving to intersection upgrades and improvements, the county has completed 8 of those since, actually 9 of those since 2020. Since 2020. Of those 9 projects, 4 of them came directly from the 2019 implementation plan. 1 was actually a result of a intersection control feasibility study, which was completed and then moved forward for implementation. And then the remaining 4, again, identified by county staff through various means. And again, summarizing those projects, we see Oxford Road 10 and Thomas Street in Ingersoll, Oxford Road 15 and Ferguson Drive in Woodstock, Oxford Road 29 and Blenheim Road, Blandford and Blenheim, Oxford Road 59 and Juliana Drive in Woodstock, Oxford Road 59 at the Oxford School in East Zora and Tavistock, Oxford Road 59 and 33 in East Zora and Tavistock. Then the intersections on Oxford Road 59 and the intersections between Oxford Road 35 and 117. So those are multiple improvements along in Woodstock. Oxford Road 59 and Oxford Road 8. And then Oxford Road 59, both at Palmer and at Tidley, Tidley in Norwich. So zooming in on those, again, understanding many of those improvements as I just spoke about are along the Oxford Road 59 corridor, having one out on the border of Ingersoll and East Zora Tavistock, Blandford Blenheim, and in Norwich, down to the south. So in addition to the physical infrastructure improvements at intersections, the county also completed a number of intersection control feasibility studies. So really the purpose of these studies is to assess operation at the study intersection and determine what improvements are needed in order to address any concerns that are brought up as within that study. And as I mentioned just previously, there was one that was completed that ultimately resulted in the physical infrastructure improvement that has already been completed. So of the 8 that were completed since 2020, they actually all were part of the 2019 implementation plan. And those 8 include Oxford Road 59 and 28, Oxford Road 4 and 15, Oxford Road 59 and Oxford Road 33, Oxford Road 59 and Oxford Road 8, Oxford Road 6 and Oxford Road 16, Oxford Road 24 and Oxford Road 5, Oxford Road 4 and Oxford Road 17, and Oxford Road 4 and Oxford Road 35. And so those, again, or all of these projects, I should say, that I've just highlighted over the last 3 slides are projects that have been completed, or I should add, will be completed by the end of this year since the approval of the 2019 Transportation Master Plan. In addition to those physical infrastructure improvements that I just went over, the county has also completed a number of planning studies and assessments. The Transportation Master Plan is one that they're working on. Obviously, we're here tonight presenting our findings on that, and so that will be completed by the end of this year. So it's a plan that they've invested in since 2020. They completed a road needs study. Tied to this program is the Oxford Road, or sorry, tied to this project is the Oxford Road 4 corridor study, and you'll see some of our findings along with or associated with that here this evening. And so that's being completed again in parallel with master plan. As I spoke a few moments ago, cycling master plan was approved at the end of last year. Their 2024 background study is in the process of being initiated and will have a transportation network study component that builds on the findings of the master plan and will confirm the needs of the DC study as it moves forward. So that will be completed this year. Bridge needs study was completed, as well as a grade level crossing safety assessment. And finally, there are 2 environmental assessments which have been completed or initiated since 2020, that being along Oxford Road 19 between Provincial Highway 19 and the Norfolk County limits, as well as the assessment for the Trans-Canada Trail Bridge over the Ontario Southland Railway. Really, what we can see, or what we hope, we hope you're all, I guess, observing through those previous slides, is the Oxford County has really invested significant time, effort, and capital budget dollars in making improvements to their road network, road systems, and completing the necessary supporting policies since the 2019 master plan, and we want to commend them for that. And then what we'll present here today is really the next iteration of, or the next group of projects to be completed, as well as the supporting policies needed for them. So next, this slide's talking about the growth of the county. Really excited to see that Oxford County is growing and is expected to continue to grow over the coming years. The county we see is mostly is intensifying the most in its urban areas of Woodstock, Ingersoll, and Tillsonburg, but the other more suburban or rural areas in the county are still seeing growth. And so this slide here is showing expected population growth and job growth over the next 20 years. And so you can see significant growth occurring in those periods. Next slide, we wanted to understand the travel trends that existed within Oxford County, both externally to the county as well as internally within the county. So the slide on your left, or the map on our left here, talks about the external travel trends and understanding the number of trips, both inbound and outbound, from the county. And we could see the top 3 destinations, both from a the top 3 destinations for people from Oxford County exiting. We see our Middlesex County, the region of Waterloo, and Haldimand Norfolk. And then actually, interesting enough, the top 3 origins. So the people who, from outside of Oxford County being destined back in, again, are the same, being Middlesex, region of Waterloo, and Haldimand Norfolk. So a lot of that is definitely, or some of this movement captured is Oxford residents coming to and fro, but it is also showing that those boundary or border municipalities are where we see the most movement between municipalities. And then internally on the right, we see travel patterns of where trips originate and where they are destined to. If you look at the table closely, you can really see in most, or in every case, the origin and destination being the same municipality is your highest trend. So people originating and staying within their local municipality, but you also do see some trends of others traveling outside their local municipal boundary, and really gives us a snapshot and an understanding of travel patterns and movement of local residents within within the county boundaries. So this next slide, we want to present and understand and look at the active transportation, intercommunity transit, goods movement, and rail networks that are existing and planned for the Oxford County and its local municipalities. So on the left, the cycling network. Here we're showing both the primary network and the secondary network that it was approved as part of the Transportation Master Plan. Just zooming in a little, you can see primary network is really predominantly a number of major connections between the centers, the population centers within the county, as well as taking advantage of connections to area or surrounding municipal connections, boundary municipal connections. And then the secondary network is that infill, those infill connections, so to say, filling in those gaps between some of the major primary spines and other key corridors. The slide in the middle is showing the intercommunity transit services that are available or planned for the County of Oxford. So the maroon or slightly purple route you see traveling through Norwich, Tillsonburg, and Southwest Oxford is the Tillsonburg intercommunity bus service, which has been very successful and popular in those areas. And then the red route on the north side of the county is the proposed intercommunity bus service planned for Zora, East Zora, Tavistock, and Blandford Blenheim. We understand is nearing implementation for those services. And then finally, looking at the rail network, understanding that there are many rail corridors that travel through Oxford County and have various implications and definitely have an importance in the system. We have the CP and CN rail lines that travel directly through Oxford County, as well as the Ontario South Rail, which has connections down to Tillsonburg from Ingersoll and up through Woodstock. So the next slides, what we want to do is present some of the analysis that we completed, which led to or were a component of our recommendations. So first we completed analysis on the existing road network. And what we can see here, so I guess, sorry, first before I say what we can see, the map on your left is presenting the volume to capacity ratio that we're seeing on the road segments of the county roads network. And so what volume to capacity is, for those who may not be aware of it or know it intimately, is that is a measure of vehicle demand relative to the capacity of a network. It's measuring how full a road is. And so looking at the network, you know, a low VC or a volume to capacity ratio that is considered free flow traffic with no delays, we've highlighted as a green, which is generally kind of a 0 to 0.0 to 0.6, so 0 to about 60%. We consider a free flow condition. From approximately 0.6 to 0.7, we see stable traffic flow, but there is the introduction of small delays, and we've categorized that as a kind of a yellow condition. Moving up in VC ratio, 0.7 to 0.8. We've recommended, or sorry, shown as orange, and is really the presence of some restricted flow. And actually, you can expect kind of a decline in comfort and convenience for those on that road or traveling on that road. And then finally, our top category, which we don't see any of in the existing network, is above 0.8. And again, that's categorized as restricted traffic flow, increased delays, and definitely is important to recognize that it is approaching capacity. And so looking at that map on the left, we're really happy to see the existing road network has you know, a high level of performance. The vast majority of its road network operates in that free flow green condition, and that there are a few minor areas of congestion, but those are, you know, categorized in the yellow and orange condition, so they are, you know, slight delay, small levels of congestion. And so we're really happy to see that when we analyzed that network with the available information and data that we had. So then next we wanted to complete a future network assessment, analyzing how did the network perform when we applied the anticipated growth that I presented to you earlier to the road network and to the area municipalities it was anticipated to come from, and how did that network perform. So we have two slides here, two maps here, looking at the ultimate condition, at our ultimate horizon. Obviously, we do have a number of kind of interim horizons that we work our way through to help us understand and properly time the implementation plan, which you'll see here in a moment. But just for the purposes of this slide and for this analysis, we wanted to show you the ultimate condition and have an understanding of what those ultimate impacts may be. And so on the left is what we call a do nothing scenario. So we make no improvements to the road network, simply adding the future network traffic and see how it performs. And what you can see there is we still have a majority green network. Absolutely is majority is still green. However, we do have an increase in the yellow and orange locations. And then we actually have 3 locations highlighted in with the numbers there that become red and are categorized as that restricted flow. And so those are the areas that we see from a network analysis perspective. We're looking at recommending improvements for the area. And those are the first one being Oxford Road 53 in Tillsonburg, down at the south end of this slide. Let me get my laser pointer out. So Oxford Road 53 down in Tillsonburg. We have Oxford Road 119 in Ingersoll, connecting from Clark Road down to the highway. And then Oxford Road 59 in Dundas and Wilson. And this one is actually interesting. We recognize Oxford Road 59 is actually undergoing some improvements right now. And so we realize those improvements are absolutely addressing not only capacity issues, but more importantly, some pedestrian and cycling connectivity elements. And so what we're really just seeing here with it in this analysis is that the continued growth projected for Woodstock and understanding the existing travel patterns we see, there actually is the potential for that road to have future capacity issues in the long-term horizon. However, it's definitely something we'll want to monitor, particularly once the improvements are made, to ensure we have an accurate understanding of kind of what those improvements have on the operation once complete. So that's just something to note. And so then, as I say, is kind of parallel or in conjunction with our network analysis broadly from a county perspective, we're also looking at, as part of the Oxford Road 4 study, the transportation conditions or intersection conditions along Oxford Road 4. And again, have a slide here presenting the levels of service of those conditions. Here we're actually presenting through all of the horizons that we're looking at from our kind of existing current day condition through each kind of interim condition. You can see from an intersection analysis perspective, it's a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more responsive to that input of growth and how those intersection operations react. And so what we're seeing is actually 3 sets of improvements or improvements needed at 3 horizons. And so first of all, kind of right off the bat, or something we're seeing immediately kind of in the existing condition, and that we'll be recommending for implementation in the immediate or very short term, is the signalization and realignment of Oxford Road 4 and 15. And so we're really the base of that recommendation is signalization, but we're also recognizing the need for realignment given its proximity to the MTO interchanges and highway ramps on Oxford Road 15. So we understand that from a spacing perspective, signalization at its current location is not feasible. So our recommendation is realignment to the west to allow for that. And then also in the immediate future, we also see the opportunity for signal timing optimization at Oxford Road 4 and Oxford Road 2. So the current signal timing, based on our analysis, is not in optimal condition. And so an adjustment to some of those timings will actually improve the operation of the intersection. Then moving forward through our horizon years, our next kind of input for improvement comes in the 2033 horizon, so a long-term horizon, and is actually the institution or implementation of a dual southbound left at Oxford Road 4 and Oxford Road 2. And so what's actually interesting with this recommendation is that second left turn lane, or at least the space for that second left turn lane, already exists at the intersection. For those of you who may have actually traveled through that intersection, it's the hatched out area that exists between the southbound traffic or the southbound through traffic and the current left turn lane. So the space is already there, which for the county allows them to implement this much more efficiently or effectively when it comes time or the need arises for that. But from a specific traffic operations perspective, we're really seeing that they do have, in the order of 10 years until the physical need from a capacity issue is there for that movement. And then the final improvement we're seeing in our analysis of the intersections is the signalization of Oxford Road 4 and Oxford Road 17. So again, if you look at kind of that, the performance of that intersection through the horizon years, you can see it deteriorates and that there is some restricted flow, but it's not until that 2046 ultimate condition that we see the level of service E and F, or that high capacity restricted flow condition, and that for us is the trigger for the recommendation for making that improvement. And so those are the intersection improvements that we see and that have been worked into the implementation plan. We'll present here momentarily. And then so we looked at a network analysis at a high network level. We then looked at the corridor analysis and intersections levels to inform our recommendations. And next we looked at collision analysis, both in the urban areas as well as in the rural areas, which I'll present here in a moment. And so the analysis of that is also been used to inform our recommendations. And so what we're presenting here is the top 10 locations in terms of volume. And so what you can see here is the top 10 urban locations are actually all within the city of Woodstock. And looking at that first column there on your left, or the leftmost column in the table, a number of them had previously been identified in the 2019 implementation plan. So as far back as the 2019 plan, recommendations for improvements existed. And then if you'll see 4 of them actually have a little star next to them. And that's just showing that those 4 were actually top 5 in the 2019 plan. And so what we can see is those still are top intersections. And so those intersections definitely are something we're looking at and have worked our way into recommendation plan that we'll be presenting here shortly. And then from a rural perspective, it's just a look at our top 10 locations. Again, map on the left that visually represents those or shows those. Again, looking at that leftmost column, you can see a number of them had been previously identified in the 2019 master plan, and 3, well, the top 3 were actually within the top 5 from 2019. So we see that. And so again, this analysis helps. This analysis is, informative, and we're definitely using these findings to help inform the recommendation plan, but they're also not our recommendations for intersection improvements and intersection feasibility studies are not solely based just on the number of collisions. It's just is one of the metrics that we are looking at as we made the recommendations that we have. And so now want to get into what actually our recommendations are and what our proposed infrastructure, both our recommendations from an infrastructure perspective, but also our recommendations from a policy perspective. So first, we'll present infrastructure implementation plans. We've categorized them again in those same categories I presented earlier, being major roads, intersection construction, intersection feasibility studies, so on. And then we'll get into policy recommendations we also have. And so with the major road reconstruction, rehabilitation, and urbanizations, we have 9 projects we're recommending, or 9 projects that are in the proposed 2019 implementation plan. We have a mixture from the area municipalities, and the way we have categorized them or are presenting them here this evening is we're either identifying them as a need in the first 10 years, being 2024 through 2033, or that their need is beyond 10 years, so 2034 plus. And so what we want as part of this consultation program, what we're looking for from input from yourselves both this evening and as you go through the remainder of the consultation period, is we want to understand from your perspective, not only are these is this the correct list or captures the needs of kind of all the needs of the implementation plan or the needs of the infrastructure improvements, but in terms of timing, what are your thoughts? What are your comments on the proposed timing of that implementation? And so, as I say, you can see here the 9 projects, 8 of them we're recommending need completion within the first 10 years, and then the one being Oxford Road 35 in Woodstock is in that 10-year plus horizon. We're looking at intersection upgrades and improvements. There are 15 projects that we've identified. So this includes projects through our review of the implementation plan and analysis that was completed as part of the 2019 plan and those that had not been completed yet. It includes the analysis we did through the corridor study for Oxford Road 4, and also includes recommendations on analysis from our collision analysis, as well as conversations had with county staff and other stakeholders to this point in the process. So of these 15 projects, you can see again, 11 of those are recommended in that first 10-year horizon, and 4 recommended in the 10-year plus horizon. We too see a broad range throughout the municipality throughout the local municipalities. And then what I should also say is part of our consultation feedback that is included in our Speak Up Oxford website, all of these infrastructure improvements have been mapped, and you're able to actually look at those mapped and provide comments directly within that process. As well as, Phil, we also have a survey online, which can form part of your comments and feedback as part of this process. Then looking at intersection control feasibility study, intersections recommended for control feasibility studies. So assessing what improvements may be needed. We have 14 projects, 9 of those being split, or 9 of those occurring, 9 within the first 10 years, 24 to 33, and then 5 of them in that 10-year plus horizon. And here we actually see the majority of them being in the more rural municipalities, which nothing specific about that, but may lean toward, a number of those intersections may be stop controlled or partially stop controlled at this time. And so what we're looking at is making those improvements from a safety and operational perspective to either full stop control or even signalization in that long term. And then finally, the final slide on kind of infrastructure projects, as well as environmental assessments we're recommending for improvement. I'll highlight here is, so there are some other, what we've categorized as other major infrastructure projects being improvements to a bridge across rail corridor in Woodstock, as well as 2 grade separations that were recommended as part of the road needs study. And so those have been identified. One the bridge improvement in that first 10-year horizon, and then the grade separations are in the beyond 10-year horizon. And then finally, there are 13 roads which are recommended for Class EAs, recognizing that those improvements or potential improvements along those corridors would be subject to the environmental assessment process. And so before any improvements could be made, that process needs to be undertaken, and it would ultimately, that process would define or identify what those improvements are or what improvements would be needed. And so of those 13 projects, there are 8 that are within the first 10 years or the 1 to 10 year horizon, and there are 5 that are in the 10+ year horizon. So as I was saying earlier, the full master plan is not simply to identify, or the full purpose of the master plan is not to simply identify infrastructure improvements. It's also to identify supporting policies and strategies which support those implementations, which also help advance other initiatives the county may be working on or have identified. And so what we have identified, or what we've looked at through both review of 2019 master plan and its policies and strategies, as well as our current recommendations, where we've summarized the supporting policies and strategies into 5 themes, being road network, active transportation, goods movement, people movement, and sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that 5th one right now. Low carbon initiatives. From within those 5 themes, there are 19 kind of broad policy and initiative topics that work down into 32 focus areas and ultimately 53 recommendations. So I'm not going to go through all of those here this evening, but I do just want to highlight a few, or highlight some of the high level information. So from a road network theme, kind of policy areas and policy initiatives that we're looking at are maximizing the road safety, optimizing or monitoring network performance, and ensuring that we're accommodating future growth. So those 3 broad policies are kind of what fall under that theme of road network. The next theme being active transportation. We have 5 kind of policy or theme or policy or initiative topics. First being cycling infrastructure, second being pedestrian infrastructure, then trail infrastructure, and future technology. Our next theme looks at goods movement, and its 2 major policy or initiative topics are supporting rail infrastructure and supporting trucking infrastructure, or truck freight. And then if I look or move to our last 2 themes, being people movement and public transportation, and then a low carbon and new technology alternatives. With people movement and public transportation, we have 5 policy or initiative themes. And they are supporting intercommunity transit, enhancing commuter rail, supporting or working with the Pilsenberg Airport, and working with the Mobility Transportation Action Ontario and the Transport Action Canada initiatives, and then looking at mobility and understanding universal basic mobility actually. And then finally, from a low carbon and new technology alternatives theme, we have 4 policy and initiative areas, that being electric vehicles and charging stations, autonomous vehicles, alternative fuel sources, and future technology. And so from all those, as I said, we focus down into the focus areas and ultimately the recommendations. So definitely interested in you know, the public reviewing these and providing their thoughts and input on those. So just before we get to our question and answer period, first of all, thank you for listening. I know this has been a relatively dense and information heavy presentation, and when we go to the question and answer, we can definitely go back to slides and look at them as we need. But just to highlight the next steps, as I say, we're kind of through the third task of this project, working toward finalizing our recommendations and ultimately drafting the master plan report here in the next few months, and ultimately presenting it to council in June of this year, at which point it'll be able to be posted for its 30-day public review. And then the county will be able to begin implementation in 2024. And so what can you do following this Public Information Center number 2? We definitely want you to review and assess this presentation material. It will be posted online, as well as the recording of this evening's presentation. And we want to understand from your perspective, what are your transportation concerns? How do you feel, or what are the priorities and needs in your eyes, and how has our proposed recommendations captured that? And then ultimately it will help us with our implementation framework and outlining the true issues and opportunities related to this study. And so again, we would encourage you to speak up, encourage you to participate as we go through this process. As I say, we have a website on Speak Up Oxford where you can provide your comments and interact with our mapping. I'm actually seeing a comment here from Ryan noting that that map is not quite live on our website, but will be there very shortly. And so we encourage you to go there and interact with that and be able to provide comments on it directly related to those infrastructure improvements that I went over here this evening, as well as there's a survey there asking you a number of questions that we encourage you to complete and fill out. And then, yeah, as I say, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts on the needs and issues of the area. And as I say, the suggestion period is open for the next few weeks, at which point we will again summarize your input and help that inform the final recommended network. So thank you again for listening. I'm going to turn it back over to Marianne here to help us walk through our question and answer period. But again, my contact information, as well as Ryan's, is on the bottom of the page there, should you have any further questions. Marianne, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for that presentation. Very informative. We will now open up the floor for questions. You can submit them through the chat function or raise your hand and I'll call on you. Just a reminder though, if you need time to think about what was presented tonight, because there was a lot of information, our comment period's open until April 11th. So you can scan the QR code on the screen. You can go to Oxford County Speak Up and submit your questions on our survey. So question floor is open. I do have one question, John, that just came through from Iva. VC volume to capacity, is it determined over a 24-hour time frame, or could there be intermittent times of higher volume?
Thank you, Iva, for your question. So volume to capacity is a measurement over an hour. So over a period of an hour. So we look at what is the capacity of a travel lane. So if we're looking at that first condition where we're looking at the network, we were looking at what is the capacity of that travel lane in that segment and measuring that capacity over an hour. Or when we were looking at intersections, we're looking at those individual lanes, whether they be dedicated left turn lanes, dedicated right turn lanes, through lanes, or shared lanes. The capacity is applied, or the calculation is done over an hour, based on the volume that we see in that hour. And so you definitely would see, to answer kind of the second point of your question, or second part of your question, you do naturally see peaks within that hour. There that every kind of minute of the hour, we don't expect the volume to be consistent. So there is some peaks within the hour, but our measure is over the full hour. What is the volume seen versus its capacity?
Thank you, John. I hope that answered your question. Mayor Schaefer had a comment. How do you see roundabouts figuring into our future transportation plans?
I'll start, but I'll definitely, Ryan, I'll let you add on if I miss anything. But for the county, I would say they see roundabouts being an integral part of the future transportation system. As you can see, we were talking about a number of both infrastructure upgrades and intersection control studies that need to be completed. In all of those recommendations, we're not saying, or we're not prescripting what improvements are needed. And when the county is looking at any intersection improvement, as part of their sustainability and low carbon initiatives, they are considering roundabouts as alternatives to signalization wherever feasible. And so it's definitely something that the county is constantly or consistently looking at. I don't know if Ryan, if you wanted to add anything to
I would
that.
just say, I think you nailed it in that, a roundabout is a form of intersection control that would be considered for most of those projects under intersection control feasibility study, whether it is the most appropriate method of control or if control is even required on some of those places. We'll have to see what the studies say. But, there's a good amount of intersections on that list that a roundabout would be considered as part of the intersection control study. Long story short, I think, roundabouts will continue to see them implemented in our county and a lot of other counties. But again, we need a study that determines that that's the best level of intersection control for each individual intersection.
Thank you, Ryan. And we got a question from Ken. Is there any consideration being given to encouraging modal shift from personal cars to buses to reduce road space demands? Could this include free or subsidized bus passes for students or other community groups? I'll
maybe give a first answer from the county before I pass this one over to you, John. I'll give you a break.
Yep.
You've had a lot of talking today, but done a really nice job. I'm going to answer this in two parts. First, about the modal shift, really good question. And that was something else I wanted to bring up at the end of the presentation, just to include it here so that people know. Obviously, the way that the pandemic impacted traffic, we're still learning. And mode share is a big part of the plan, and how COVID has impacted mode shares is a big part of the plan. That it's hard to really know exactly how that has impacted the transportation mode share and just in general, since as we started moving back to work, what percentage of people will continue to work from home? What percentage of the days will they continue to work from home? We're really at an interesting point where we have to kind of determine that and kind of make an assumption based on those type of trends, based, with the best quantitative data that we can. So, long story short, to answer Ken's question about is there any consideration being given to encouraging modal shift from personal cars? Of course, there'll be goals in this plan for mode shifts, but as well as that, we're also trying to quantify how changing mode trends are impacting our. So, we've reached out to transit agencies, and we're going to reach out to rail agencies as well to see what level of ridership they're seeing in 2023 compared to pre-pandemic. So that's part of our analysis that we're looking into there. As for the second part of your question, could this include free or subsidized bus passes and again, we're going to be encouraging a mode share change or a more environmentally responsible level of mode share change. We'll have a target in this report for it. As for bus passes, that seems like probably a area municipality type of implementation, because the county has an intercommunity transit plan that we support, but we don't have transit ourselves. So any type of transit free or subsidized ridership would probably be an area municipality initiative. But like everything that John showed on the slide where it said what we heard from PCC1, there's a little point at the bottom that says any comments that were given to us as part of this plan that are more appropriate for an area municipality will be passed on to them. So that comment that you asked about free and subsidized bus passes, we'll be sure to pass on to City of Woodstock, Town of Tillsonburg, Town of Ingersoll, most appropriate there. John, anything else to add?
No, I think you summarized it well, and I just to add or to reinforce the mode share question is you're absolutely right. So we're all of the analysis that we completed, the analysis we showed on the road network as well as those intersection networks, that we're looking at the growth within those, or within the projection of that growth and what that means in terms of trips. We've made assumptions on what that mode share is. You know, we looked at the targets from the 2019 master plan, and then we looked at how COVID, the restrictions or the work from home realities of COVID have changed that potential mode share. And so as we finalize our plan, we're going to be coming up with what's our new recommendation or our new targets for mode share moving forward. And so you'll see actually in the survey, there are some questions targeted toward that mode share and trying to validate really for those who started working from home during the pandemic, how many have stayed there and expect to stay there on a semi-permanent or permanent basis, because really a work from home obviously takes or a work from home resident obviously takes a trip off our network and really is representative of a kind of a sustainable mode of transportation. So we want to make sure we're accurately capturing that. And so that's why you'll see in our survey, we have some questions around that.
Great. Thank you, John. And Ken had a follow-up question. Large parking areas are very poor land use. So will Oxford County be looking at modal shift to enable better land use?
I mean, I would say land use and transportation networks work hand in hand. And so obviously, you know, from a land use perspective, those are in many cases, or they are directed by local area municipalities. So they have their land use plans and their land use designations, but this master plan and then any area specific master plan helps inform, I guess, the needs of the network, and obviously opportunities of underutilized areas like parking lots may help with growth that ultimately will have a potential impact on a network. And obviously, if we can encourage mode share shift, the impact is less.
Thank you, John. I don't see any more questions. If you don't want to, or you want to think about the presentation tonight, we do have a comment period open till April 11th. And even beyond that, you can still reach out to the project managers, Ryan Vink from Oxford County and John Grief from Parsons, if you have additional questions or concerns or comments you want to make. Just looking at the chat here, I don't see any more questions, but feel free to submit.
Yeah, and also I would say if you want you to ask us the question directly, if you don't feel like typing it out. Also, like we said, there's the raise hand function. You raise your hand and we can actually unmute you, and you can ask a question kind of verbally. Happy to do that.
I'll also add that as part of our public consultation, second round of public consultation, we're also meeting with our external stakeholders for a technical advisory meeting with them in the next couple of weeks, as well as our industrial economic development stakeholders as well in our ECDEV meeting. So we'll be meeting with key stakeholders in the areas with a similar presentation as this to get the area municipalities and all the other important stakeholders feedback on the recommendations that we're presenting. And like John mentioned, a lot of the MOCHAIR assumptions can be informed by some of the questions we have in the survey. So I think that, Ken, that's something there that would interest you. And last thing about large parking areas, there'll be a part of this plan that involves ride sharing and local ride sharing opportunities as well. So that'll be something that we encourage as best as we can.
Thank you, Ryan. Last call for questions, but
Well,
again,
sorry,
oh.
sorry, Mary, not to cut you off, but I want to also add, Ryan, we would be remiss if to not remind those online that we also will be holding 3 in-person opportunities over the next week and a half. So this coming Thursday, we'll be in Woodstock. And then next week, Tuesday, we'll be in Ingersoll. And Thursday.
This Thursday, we're actually in Ingersoll. Thursday.
Sorry, I got my locations mixed up.
No problem.
Ryan,
Thursday,
why don't you tell them?
Thursday night, thank you for reminding me. That was a good reminder, John. Thursday night will be in Ingersoll Town Council Chambers from 6 to 7. And then next Wednesday will be at Oxford County Council Chambers, but that will be your Woodstock opportunity for an in-person engagement. And then next Thursday is in Tillsonburg at Town of Tillsonburg Council Chambers. And like Marianne and John said, if you have any questions and you want to review the material and post a question, there's a comment form on the Speak Up Oxford project page for the Transportation Master Plan where you can fill out a comment and ask us the question, and the response will be included in the final study as an appendix to the study as part of the second round of public consultation report. So feel free to get involved in the project, however suits you best. And again, this presentation and the slides will be posted online if anybody wants to review afterwards.
Right, and I'll take it away from you, Ryan. Yes, the final report that's posted, we will have all comments posted that we receive from the public as an appendices, so you can look through and see what your neighbors are saying about this project. So again, April 11th, if you want to comment on this comment period, but our comment period also, if you have questions beyond that, feel free to reach out to Ryan and John and we will answer your questions. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. I think with that, we will conclude the meeting and end the presentation and the recording. And we look forward to hearing more from anybody else who wants to ask us questions or give us feedback. Thank you very much again, everybody, for your time.
Have a good evening.